Like a shadow on the darkened wall, Garrett made his way silently through the night. Basso had suggested taking the newest member of the family to the outskirts of Stone Mart. There was supposedly a retired guard living there, and he had quite a trinket on his hands. A medal, the sort that were presented to all town guards upon their retirement, for their kind and loyal services to the people. Garrett couldn't help but scoff at the notion. However, if said prize could be lifted, it was sure to fetch a good price. And if Guinevere happened to fail her test, the thief promised himself that he would come back later, after the heat had died down, and take it for himself. He led her to Stone Mart, and watched as she crept in and out of the alleyways, unnoticed by all. While she was awkward and clumsy, her invisibility spell did help immensely. But to the seasoned rogue, even with such powers, being light on one's feet was still of the utmost importance.
What kind of an asset would she be to you, Basso, if you knew how graceless she was on her feet?
He grumbled almost silently to himself. Magical or not, Garrett had a feeling that this girl was going to cause him trouble one day. When Guinevere did eventually make her way to the alley where he was waiting, the thief jumped down from the scaffolding. The girl screamed in surprise, and Garrett involuntarily clasped a gloved hand around her gaping mouth. Guinevere looked at him, and her breathing returned to normal as she realized who it was that held her. Those blue and hazel eyes were once again before her, burning with wild ambition.
Never scream. No matter how fearful you become, there's seldom a better way to give away your position.
He hissed in a low and serious tone. Sensing that he would only be angrier at her if she were to try and speak, Guinevere simply nodded vigorously.
Good. You understand. Now about your stealth.
Garrett began, still covering her lips. Guinevere's soft green eyes were shimmering with trust and moonlight.
It's not very good. In fact, it's terrible. Lesson 3. You cannot rely on crutches and single skills that make things easier for you. They only end up pulling you back. A true thief takes what they're given and uses it to their advantage.
Guinevere nodded again, taking in each of the words he spoke.
Now, the test that Basso had set up for you, it's in that house.
He pointed up to a single, darkened window next to the scaffolding where he had been lurking moments earlier.
An old guard, named Dmitri. He resides there. Recently, he was awarded a medal for his upstanding services to the people. You know, beating them and the like.
He retracted his hand from his pupil's mouth, foul malice in his tone. Garrett stared at her noble face for a long while. The girl before him was daughter of the Simmons family. If there were ever two things he despised, they were the aristocracy and magic. This girl had both coursing through her veins. For the first time in his abundant career, Garrett was beginning to regret accepting Basso's payment. Initially, he had been impressed by Guinevere's invisibility spell, and her ability to sneak up and grab his arrow whilst using it. But this had proven to be little more than a one-off, because for the remainder of the evening, Garrett had seen nothing more from her that marked her as thief material.
If you fail to steal this medal, you'll be forced to return to Basso empty-handed, and I'll be forced to pay him back. I'm sure that neither of us wants that, so be sure you don't come out of that place without the loot.
He ordered. Guinevere nodded again.
I'll do my best, Garrett,
she proclaimed.
Just hope that your best is enough.
He scoffed.
After you've taken the medal, we'll rendezvous behind the clock tower. If you're not out of there in an hour, you're on your own. I'm sure your wealthy parents will be able to bail you out,
he remarked dryly. Guinevere tensed. Hadn't Garrett been listening to her? She had made it perfectly clear that she was no longer a Simmons, and that she could never return to her life of luxury.
I told you.
Point is, if you tap this up, it will reflect badly on me.
The thief finished her sentence. Guinevere cleared her head and forced herself to smile.
Then the answer is simple. I don't fail.
And with that confident statement, the young woman faded into a translucent haze. The door creaked slightly behind her as Guinevere entered the home. It was a small penthouse, battered and worn. It was too dark for the young woman to make out most of the home, but moonlight glistened through several of the windows, allowing her to navigate. As she proceeded around the dark room, her mind raced. What did this medal even look like? Why would Garrett send her without even telling her this? That's when Guinevere remembered a sketchy detail about her lavish past life. Her family, namely, she and her father, had been present at several award ceremonies for retiring guards. The young apprentice then searched her mind for any recollection of these coveted medals. And eventually, the image in question came to mind. A circular golden brooch, with silver leaves framing the crest of the Baron. This was yet another test by her wizened mentor. Garrett had known, well in advance, that Guinevere would know what these medals looked like. He wanted her to fend for herself by using her past as an advantage.
I know what they look like now, but I still have to find where he keeps it.
She spoke in a whisper. Invisibility at her disposal, Guinevere followed the glimmer of the fireplace, and prepared to step inside. The blaze illuminated Dimitri's slumbering face. He was slumped over in his chair, his mouth set into a firm frown. Heavy snoring accompanied the crackles and pops of the timber as it burned to ashes. Guinevere's eyes sparkled. The guard had the medal affixed to his shirt. She had found her quarry. Now, all she had to do was take it. Slinking ever closer, the girl reached out and pulled on her prize. The medal snapped off with ease, barely stirring the sleepy man.
I did it!
She mused. With one final look at her first victim, Guinevere exited the dwelling. Garrett was waiting for her behind the clock tower, just as discussed. He scoffed as his student reappeared before him. She held out the medal in her palm.
Garrett, look! I did it!
She proclaimed, glee and pride coating her every word.
Did you remain invisible the entire time?
The thief asked, ignoring her triumph.
Yes I did!
She replied, thinking that he was praising her efforts and talents. Her joy was cut short as the thief slowly shook his head.
Then you haven't learned anything. What did I tell you about crutches? About using the environment to your advantage? You may think that your spells are enough to see you through, and apparently, so does Basso. But eventually the tables will turn, and if all you're relying on is your ability to fade, you're gonna be a shit out of luck.
She began, unsure what to say to such harsh words. It seemed to Guinevere that her new teacher despised her with a vengeance, although she couldn't be sure why.
The lesson is over for this evening. I suggest you take that medal to Basso.
Before Guinevere could object, Garrett disappeared into the night.